Hello, I am Shamsher. Welcome back to my channel Mako English. Today we are going to discuss a topic which is about Sylvia Plath. She achieved a lot in her life, although she lived only a small life. She died only at the age of 30, but her achievements denied her age. And she is well known throughout the world for her poetic outputs. First of all, we are going to talk about her early childhood. She was born in October 1932, and her father, Otto Plath, was a biologist. He knew a great deal about bees. He also published a book on bees named Bumblebees and Their Wage. Throughout her childhood, she loved her parents a lot. She became really aware of his personality and he loved her a lot. But soon the misfortune befell the family. While she was only 8, her father passed from the disease called diabetes mellitus. It was his father who ignored the early signs of wound on his toe. His situation worsened, and when the situation became really troubled, he got hospitalized, and a few days later the doctors amputated his leg, and within a month he passed away in November 1940. Soon after her death, when the children came to know the news of her father's demise, it was a blow to Sylvia Plath as well as to family. Though the family suffered the blow, but Sylvia was unable to accept it, blamed the God for his earlier demise. He stopped talking, and for days she kept himself mum. After that, she got busy in her work, and only a year after her first poem was published in the Herald Tribune. It was a major achievement for the family. She really concentrated on her studies and she started writing at a very early age. While she was 13, she mastered the typewriter and she can type 80 words a minute. After their father's death, their family moved near to their maternal parents' home. There she enjoyed the life a lot, and she herself claimed that she had a happy childhood as well as a happy adolescence period. But the single loss which she suffered throughout her life was the early demise of her father. She counted on many occasions that it was a wound that will never heal up. From the early demise of her father, throughout her life suffered from Electra complex. Electra complex was a term which was developed by psychologist Carl Jung, and later this theory was elaborated by Freud. Freud described the term that every girl kid from the very starting age of her life, she fight for the control of her father and she disdains her mother while she is competing for her father. This is a relation which developed at early phallic stage. After her father's death, the family moved to Wellesley. Wellesley was a quiet place along with family members. She enjoyed the visits to sea, and she said that during Massachusetts period she visited the sea a lot, and she told in an interview that the memories of sea still resonated with her. She loved the sights of the sea a lot, and whenever she got the chance, She rushed to see the wonderful memories of hurricanes were still alive with her. She enjoyed them a lot. From Wellesley State School. In 1950, she completed her senior secondary, and in 1951, she moved to Smith College to complete her graduation. While she was studying there, in 1953, she was selected as a guest editor by the Mademoiselle magazine, and she went to New York. When she was selected, she was extremely happy, but soon after she moved to New York, she was really disappointed, and the thing which was biting her was that all the peers thought that she was just a conventional girl, middle class girl who couldn't cope with the higher society. It was a blow to her. Many times she got disappointed over this. She wrote her experience in the novel The Bell Jar. The Bell Jar was published under the name of Victoria Lucas. Esther Greenwood is the main character. New York was really a difficult period for her, and whenever she met with her male counterparts, she struggled to cope with the situation, and more she met with people, the more she got estranged. The many encounters with those personalities beaten him brutally. She suffered a lot. She proposed by the girl Joan. She rejected the proposal. It is semi-autobiographical novel. She applied for a creative course in Howard University. Soon after she was rejected from this course, she returned to home without telling anyone. The news of her disappearance published in many newspapers, and when she returned home, she found herself really isolated. For days, she kept herself aloof and did nothing. She said that it became really difficult for her to continue writing. It was really a shameful period for her. She spent most of her time reading Sigmund Freud, and she found that every symptom which was presented in this abnormal psychology by Freud applied to her directly. It became really difficult for her to come in terms with these things. She can't survive as a victim, and she never wanted to be a burden for the family. On 24th August, and she went to her house basement. She stayed there and she took pills. The next day, her mother reported the missing of her daughter as well as the sleeping pills. The police investigated the case, and the next day she was found in their basement. There were ants and other insects biting her. She was hospitalized. Within days, she became really good, and the doctor prescribed her the electric shock therapy, and she started taking electric shock therapy. Whenever she was given the electric shock therapy, the situation got worsened, and everything the doctors did to her deteriorated the situation. It was really a painful period for her. In the end of the novel, she is waiting for the doctor's approval for her continuing study, and it is a positive note where the novel Bell Jar ends. She completed her graduation in 1955. After completing her graduation, she attended Newnham College at Cambridge University. It was a famous women's college at the heart of the Cambridge University. During early 1956, she met Ted Hughes. As soon as they met at a party in Cambridge, she fell in love with Ted Hughes. They started dating, and 4 months later, they got married. When they got married, it was really a great period for her. She was extremely happy. Soon after her marriage, the couple went to honeymoon in September 1953. The couple returned from the honeymoon. Ted decided to return to his parents' house. So Sylvia Plath moved along with him to his parents' home. Their parents lived in Yorkshire. It was a beautiful place with splendid landscape and the hillside, the grass, the hilltops, everything was amusing there. She spent days visiting, or rather traveling in the landscape. She got immersed in that landscape, and it is not an exception that she established herself as a landscape poet. She beautifully or vividly portrayed the landscape which she saw there. It was a long stretch of moorland, and moorland was really a place which was in tune with her. She spent most of the time mingling with the nature. That not only introduced her to the landscape, he also taught her the basics of poetry. He introduced her to a community where it was a tradition to tell the ghost story in such a way that they reverberate within your heart for years to come. So when she learned those stories, she got really excited. She portrayed all these natural as well as supernatural experience in her later creations. Whenever she wrote poetry, the credit goes to this natural habitat as well as to Ted Hughes. Without Ted Hughes, it was impossible to have these skills she had. Later on, while she was writing Wuthering Heights, she visited the Bronte sisters. When they were just 13, they penned their first novel, and like Sylvia Plath, they were really good at their creations. So Sylvia paid a visit to their museum. She beautifully woven the landscape in her poems. Previously, she published the poems The Great Carbuncle and Hardcastle Crag. In the poems The Great Carbuncle and Hardcastle Crag, she beautifully weaves the landscape. When she visited the Bronte sisters, she decided to write the Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights was a novel written by them, and she decided to write the poem with the same name. It was the protagonist's location at the grass tops. These were the merely ruins, and when Sylvia Plath visited these grass tops, she soon discovered that this was the position of the protagonist, Heathcliff. She enjoyed these ruins greatly and admired them a lot. When she started writing her poem, Wuthering Heights, she expanded the natural beauty of the landscape as well as her inner state of mind. She said that the natural beauty is prevailing, but she is passive. She is like the person who has no energy. Later on, she wrote a collection of poems, Ariel. In 1960, she started writing the poems. Everything was going well for her, and during that period she stayed with her husband. They had 2 children. The elder kid was a girl named Frida, and the younger one was Nicholas. They were born in 1960 and 1962 respectively. The life was really going well with her, and she was enjoying the period she was staying with her husband. She told on many occasions that life is really charming for her, but things didn't remain forever so. She had a terrible setback when she came to know that Asia Weevil is having an affair with her husband. Previously, the couple had invited Asia Weevil and her Canadian author husband to their house. They started living in the rented cottage of theirs, and soon after, Ted Hughes fell to Asia Weevil. It was a huge shock to her. It was really impossible to live with her husband on these conditions, and she felt alienated. She felt like an alien. In 1962, she decided to leave her husband, and in December 1962, she left her husband and she went back to London from Devon. At that time, when she left her husband, Ted Hughes was staying in Devon with Asia Weevil. She took her 2 children with her and she moved to London. It was really a harsh winter. In the years, there was no sun for days. Everything froze at that time. The roads were covered with ice and the sea froze. The water supply became intermittent as the water clogged in the pipes. She was feeling really cheated. There she wrote her novel The Bell Jar. In Bell Jar, which was published in 1962, this novel was published under the pen name of Victoria Lucas. Soon after its publication, it became a major hit. It was really the sufferings which inflicted her the most. Even though she was suffering from the pain of the loss, she still created some masterpiece during that short period. One of them is the Lady Lazarus and other one is Daddy. Both of these poems were written just a month before her actual suicide. In Lady Lazarus, she compares herself to the character of Lazarus. Lazarus was a man who got resurrected by Jesus. Resurrection means the man is born after death. So Jesus made this man to rise again. She compared herself to the lady version of that man. So she portrays herself as Lady Lazarus and tells the story of her suicidal attempt and says that dying is an art as everything else. Every decade she tried the suicide. First attempt was committed when she was merely 10. According to the news sources, she tried to slit her throat, and she was saved. Next attempt she committed during that time when she got rejected from the Howard University writing course. She committed it inside her home. After taking those 40 sleeping pills, she retired to the basement of the house, but later on she was saved by the doctors. She says in this poem that there are 9 times for her as any cat can perform this charisma. In the poem Daddy, she describes the daddy as a fascist, and she says that it is really difficult for her to live with his image inside her. She tries to kill her within her own heart. She's at the end of the poem, she also narrates a story that another brute person who was none other than Ted Hughes, and says that he also gave immense pain to her. She also portrays that these two persons are nowhere near to me now, and she tries to bring them outside of her. She became hollow from the inside. It was inevitable that there was no life icon for her now. She returned to her third and final suicidal attempt in the February after her novel Beljour. She committed her third attempt. This time she went to a oven and sealed her face inside the oven, and she died of carbon monoxide. She lived as a giant figure and she died as a giant figure. After her death, her third collection of poems got published, Ariel. The collection published in 1965. It received a huge encouragement as well as many accolades from the critics. These were the best poems she wrote during her final days. Her final days were really remarkable for her, and she produced many great poems while she was staying alone in London in the harsh winter period. 2 of the poems were Lady Lazarus and Daddy, which were also published in this edition. As soon as the Ariel got released, her critics were quite convinced that it was the emergence of a different poet. It is true that when at her tender age as well as during her adolescent age she wrote poetry, the poetic output was quite different from those written in Ariel. Ariel was a masterpiece. The author had found her voice herself, and now she was to be remembered for this production. 6 years later, in 1971, her next collection of poems got published, Winter Trees. The first poem of the title was Wuthering Height. Wuthering Height got really accolade from the critics. It was the culmination of the previous poems, The Great Carbuncle and Hardcastle Crag. Hardcastle Crag and The Great Carbuncle initiated a journey which got culminated in Wuthering Heights. In 1981, the book, her collected poems, got published. She won a Pulitzer Prize for Literature. She is remembered as the greatest poet of the 20th century. Confessional poets are those poets who deal with the taboo subject such as death, suicide, as well as addiction. She portrayed her image beautifully, and she told her story vividly as well as truthfully. Whenever we learn about Sylvia Plath, whenever we read Sylvia Plath, one thing is certain, that we gain a sense of humor as well as a sense of disappointment which reflects our true inner self. Had she lived long, she would have beaten many of the legends of poetry in her short period. She inked her name so faithfully that it is hard for us to deny her existence. She was a poet known for feminism, her inner struggles. She never shied away from telling those subjects which were considered taboo at that time. It is a huge motivation for us how she resolves the inner conflict in order to produce these masterpieces. Not only her poems but many of the essays are known throughout the world. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much again.